Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal, where, as you can see, I'm joined by James Benge of CBS. So it is time for Inside Arsenal Extra Time, slightly delayed this week because of my wife deciding to chip her tooth just before we were going to record yesterday. So we've pushed it back 24 hours. You'll be delighted, James, to know that her teeth are now back intact and we're ready to go. How are you doing, mate? You good?
I mean, I was genuinely worried only because I've done the thing before of chipping a tooth and not dealing with it, and then the tooth I'm currently in the process of having a replacement tooth. I'd be very lucky to be blessed with perfect teeth. I never had a single problem. Never had a filling anything when I was young. Got very good teeth, and then one of them snapped, and I panicked and had no idea how to deal with it. Didn't deal with it. As anyone that's had a dental implant will know, I'm paying the price, quite literally.
Right. My mate, Dan, who won't be watching because he's a Spurs fan, but he is still a mate. And he went on holiday with his family once, Portugal, literally got over there, dumped his bags down, opened the doors of the villa, dived into the swimming pool, hit his face on the bottom of the pool. Luckily, he didn't snap his neck because you hear those stories, but completely knocked out half of his front tooth. And then had to go to an emergency Portuguese dentist who completely botched getting the tooth back on, and it lost its colour, and it was just an absolute disaster. But yeah, that's my mate's tooth story about emergency dentists in Portugal. Didn't work out too well for him.
You have lost anyone that's squeamish about teeth.
Yeah, he has sorted it out now.
Which is me.
He's a Spurs fan, so I'm sure there's not going to be too much sympathy. No. But look, aside from teeth, how's the week gone? Did you enjoy the madness of the final round of European fixtures?
Well, what was quite fun for me, I was at the Etihad, so hopefully we can bring that into the chat about Man City. I didn't really kind of have to follow that too much. I had, of course, half an eye on Arsenal. I will admit I've only seen the goals from that game. But you could almost, for me, it was this sort of straight knockout game, effectively, or certainly a knockout game for City. But I thought it worked quite well, and we've got some really fun and interesting draws and big games in the round of 16. So the round of 16 and the knockout playoffs. So I thought it worked really well. I mean, you didn't go to Girona, so I presume did you just watch Arsenal, or did you?
And because of that, I didn't get the sort of, it all been hyped about. There's so many games going on; it's going to be amazing. Teams are going to be dropping in 5 places with a goal. I never really got that sense because when you're watching Arsenal, they weren't really saying too much about what was going on elsewhere, so you never kind of got that drama. Maybe if you're watching the goal show or something like that, it would have been slightly different. But
I mean, if Arsenal had conceded.
Yeah, well, they did
in the Real Madrid.
They did
conceded when they were 2-1 up.
No, but they did.
Of course.
Duarte equalised to make it 2-2, and obviously it went to VAR. It was just offside. But yeah, had that counted, I think Arsenal would have dropped down to about 5th or 6th or something like that. So that it was quite fortunate that was. So honestly, if you're watching TNT Sports, which obviously you weren't, the absolute heartbreak in the commentator's voice that goal was ruled out was unbelievable. I think it was like Stuani's. I don't know if he's leaving Girona or something like that, and they seem to think it was so romantic that he'd scored this late equaliser against Arsenal before he left the club or something. And it was Matterface, and I can't remember who was on co-coms. It might have been Lucy Ward or someone. And they were absolutely heartbroken that the goal was ruled out. It was really, really bizarre.
I mean, Matterface must have just have been relieved that Saka wasn't playing because that guy still can't pronounce his name. But I mean, yeah, it's not exactly plucky underdog tale, is it? With Girona, bought by City Football Group, get given Savinho and qualify for Champions League.
They mentioned that on commentary about 70 minutes in. They mentioned it for the first time about 70 minutes in, because before that it was the big sort of plucky underdog story. Before they mentioned they were actually City Football Group owned.
God, yeah, it's sort of plucky underdog on easy mode, isn't it? When you're having sort of players like Mikel, I mean, like half the players they've got there because of City Football Group. Miguel Gutierrez, he didn't play. Savinho when he was there. It's a pretty cushy life.
Yeah, they weren't great. I didn't think I was comfortable enough for a much changed Arsenal side to get the job done. Other than, have you seen the goals? What did you make of Neto for Danjuma's goal? It is so bizarre. Every time I see it,
rusty goalkeeping. maybe when you haven't, I have not been a professional goalkeeper. Maybe when you've sort of not played in a live situation for that long, you sort of lose your sort of spatial awareness. Like when you've not driven for a while, you're a bit like, and then you get back into the groove. Maybe he just sort of hadn't quite realised where his penalty area ended. No, that was dreadful. Yeah, really poor.
Yeah, it was. And actually, before that, literally the first minute of the game, the first ball that was passed back to him, he kind of like forgot what he had to do. It was really bizarre because he actually had quite a bit of time and he used that time to do nothing and then suddenly got robbed of possession. He's just like, what do I do here? Do I pass it? And then by the time he'd sort of thought it out. So it wasn't a great start. To be fair to him, he did settle down. And I thought everything he had to do after the goal, basically, he did fine. I mean, it wasn't overly tested, but he gathered crosses well. He released the ball quickly. And so, yeah, it was, but those first 25 minutes, certainly those two incidents were just really bizarre. Like you said, I can only put it down to kind of ring rust, basically, of just not playing a competitive game in 7 months and then getting out there. And yeah, it was just so, I mean, if he'd have handball, if he'd have saved that, Arsenal would have been down again to 10 men for like 7 minutes. And all the idea of resting players and taking it easy goes straight out the window because you're suddenly having to run around without an 11 men for 70 minutes.
I presume there would have been some mad Arsenal fans there that assumed that Neto handballing it was PGMOL getting their payback.
Yeah, I'm sure it would have. It was certainly. There's one decision you absolutely could not have complained about. To be fair,
they'd have found a way.
But we're not talking about PGMOL on this or anything like that. Actually, let me quickly. I mean, it's unbelievable that Arsenal have been charged by the FA for what happened against Wolves. I'm sorry, everyone. How can you not complain about that? How can you stand there, hands in your pockets on the pitch, and just go, it's fine. It's fine. You've just made the biggest error we've probably seen in our lifetimes on a football pitch, but we're going to stand here with our hands in our pockets. It's like
they're the rules.
Bollocks. That's utter rubbish. How many teams surround the referee after every single decision and not one? This was, we've got to do something against Arsenal.
But the difference then is you go to the FA and the independent panel and say, please look at all this footage from here. Like, if you're asking them to do that, they kind of have to go, look, we've looked at all the footage. You're right, Miles Lewis-Skelly, this is a bad decision, very poor refereeing. But like, you've asked us to look at all this footage. You guys have surrounded the referee, all sympathy. And I'm sure they won't get the sort of maximum fine available. But
all sympathy.
Like,
there's no sympathy.
You can't break the rules.
Well, so many other teams have done it this season. They haven't been charged with it. When Bruno got sent off for Man United against Spurs, they didn't get charged after that, and they all surrounded the referee complaining about it. It reeks of someone ringing up and saying, "We've got to do something. They can't get away scot-free from this. We've all got eggs on our faces here. They've got to have something." But anyway, I'm not talking about that. We're done on that. Let's talk about the transfer window. Mikel Arteta has just finished his press conference, everyone, ahead of that game against Manchester City. He has been talking about transfers and team news, so we'll go over what he's had to say. What did you make of the move for Ollie Watkins, James? What was you were probably sitting in a Etihad press room or on your way to the Etihad when this all broke?
I was literally on the tram trying to file copy because I actually wasn't surprised, and I think this all sort of knits in together more straightforwardly than maybe some will realize. And it's really a story, and I like it when the stories are about this because I know things. It's a story about Al Nassr and it's a story about PIF and Saudi Arabia. So, I reported this at the time, and I'm still very, very confident this is the case. Al Nassr thought they were getting Victor Boniface and wanted him. He was their top target. And that was all agreed. That was all lined up. And at the same time, Aston Villa needs, I mean, you can sort of see the quotes from Monchi today are basically saying, we need to tidy up our PSR position. So the money that we get for Duran, a lot of that or some of that will be put aside. So it sounds to me like Villa had to sell a striker. And if Villa can't sell Duran to PIF, if you're Arsenal, you sort of go, okay, we can give you 40 million, 45 million, whatever the final fee was for Ollie Watkins. What do you reckon? I don't have much sympathy with the idea that so the bid went in on sort of Monday, didn't it?
Monday, yeah.
And by then it was apparent that Boniface was off to Saudi Arabia, or that's what it looked like. Certainly didn't prove to be the case.
Why did they change their mind? Do you know why they suddenly went for Duran when Boniface looked certain?
Al Nassr didn't change their mind. Al Nassr's owners, Piff, made the ultimate call.
Right. Okay.
That's why they got John Duran. I don't know why they went for John Duran. But obviously then Villa are in no pressure to sell. I mean, I'd like to get your view on this bit, but do you think if Arsenal will even sort of go back in again? Because it surely won't happen, will it?
I just can't see it. I just don't see how, if you're Villa, you could even entertain it. So, and Arsenal must surely know that. I'm sure Arsenal have had pretty good assurances from sort of possibly from Watkins' side. We know he's a massive Arsenal fan, and I don't think you put that bid in unless you're sure that if it gets accepted, Watkins is going to go. But in what world would Villa consider it now they've sold Duran? It's just, they're in the Champions League knockout stages. They're pushing for a Champions League spot again in the Premier League. You can't sell your two strikers in January, can you? So I just don't see how it's doable, even if they sign João Felix, Asensio. They're not strikers; they're not out and out nines, and so I just can't see it. I'd be very surprised. You never know, but I'd be very surprised if it's even worth going for another offer. I don't buy into the whole. I don't get why Villa were angry about the timing of the bid. Really, I never really understood that. Because it's like, what are you going to do? You got a bid. Your time's running out in the transfer window. They can't wait 2 days until a game finishes and then put a bid in, can you? I think you just go for it if you decide that he's the guy. I don't like the idea. I don't know why Arsenal have waited. If they really wanted Ollie Watkins, then go on January the 1st. Go on January the 2nd. I'm not. It just.
But I think that's what it comes from, is that Villa's angle to selling Duran looked like it had sort of closed up for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone sort of thought that Duran was the one that would go.
Yeah.
And obviously that proved to be the case. But at the very start of this week, like, Al Nassr looked like they were getting Victor Boniface, and therefore, Duran looked like he was stuck. And you sort of, if you're Arsenal, you go, you want to stick with Duran and we'll take Watkins off your hands.
Do you think Villa would have sold it ultimately? Do you think Arsenal could have been successful if Duran hadn't gone to Saudi? Do you reckon Arsenal could have got him?
Yeah, I think they would have. I think it might have been the sort of fee more like what the original reporting was around at the 60 million level.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I think. I sort of really prevaricate on this one, because I think you're almost sort of paying 60 million for a guy that you might keep around for, like, might be your striker for 2 years. But I don't mind that. It's a win now move. Yeah. I think they would have got him if Duran hadn't gone.
I didn't mind
it. What would you have thought then?
I didn't mind it. I think he would have added something absolutely that the team needs, that the squad needs. That guy who can run in behind, who's just all about the goal really as well. He's just always about sort of getting to the goal as quickly as possible and just making things happen, whether it be scoring himself or setting up. He's very good when it comes to assists. We saw he did that again for Morgan Rogers in the Champions League. So, and I wouldn't have been overly bothered as long as it wasn't a move that absolutely stopped Arsenal doing whatever business they want to do in the summer, which I would have hoped it wouldn't be. I wouldn't have been too bothered about the price either. I know it sounds mad because it is £60 million for someone you basically you're not going to be selling, so you're not going to get any money back for him. Like you said, it's win now, but sort of between 45 and 60 million nowadays, that's kind of just like 25-30 million pounds, which sounds mad to say, but it is. It's just a going rate for a really proven Premier League striker who we know scores goals. So, Arsenal, Wrighty was 28 when Arsenal signed Wrighty. That didn't turn out too bad. So, I wouldn't have been against it. I have to say, I was quite excited when I first saw the news, as I was kind of thinking about it. I was on my way to my dad's to watch the Arsenal game, the Girona game, and when I left my house, there was absolutely nothing. And then I was stuck in traffic, and my phone was flashing. It was on the seat next to me. My phone was just flashing. And sorry, my cat has just decided to say hello, Whiskey.
Oh, hello.
Cat has decided to just jump on the table next to me. No, you're going to get in the way now, aren't you? I'm going to put you down because everyone's going to hear you purring. And suddenly my phone was next to me and it was just flashing up. And I was sitting in the traffic and I looked at it and I just suddenly saw it was my mates were all talking about Watkins. What's that about? And then I got to my dad's and I saw what was happening. I was like, oh, God, that's happened so quickly. But yeah, I'm kind of resigned to it. Let me just go through what Mikel has just said at a press conference. Obviously, he was asked not specifically about Watkins. Watkins was mentioned in the questions, But, the questions weren't about Watkins, they're about forwards. And he obviously caveated it at the start by saying, I don't talk about individuals and all that sort of stuff. But on transfers and whether he is confident that Arsenal will sign a forward before Monday's deadline, he said, I'm very confident with the work the club is doing and exploring every single opportunity that we believe can have an impact on the team. If we can agree something, we will. If not, we won't. We are trying everything that we can. I don't want to give any reassurances or not. I just don't know. It doesn't depend only on us. Our intentions are clear, but the possibilities are affected by three parties. He was then asked, this was by, I think it was Alex at BBC, was asked, I think he worded it like, Watkins is quite old. I'm not going to talk to you just about him, but is that the sort of forward you want to sign, or is it, does it matter what age he is, if it's young or old? And he said, we don't really look at the market in those terms. We look at what we have in the squad, what we are lacking, and what we can bring, something that potentially can make us better, regardless the age or sometimes the background they have. It's about a real belief that the player can be really good for us over time. It's quite weird, because the two strikers at the moment being linked with Arsenal, obviously Watkins, but then you got Matthias Tell. So you got two at the completely entirely different spectrum in terms of age and and experience and everything like that. I mean, what did you make of those comments? So I think I thought it was interesting when he said, I don't want to give any reassurances.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he knows time is running out now. He might well be confident, but the fact is, Arsenal are against the clock, and it is going to get harder and harder from this point to get a deal over the line. And I think he probably knows that now.
It's not looking good, Brev. I even thought that the comment about confidence was, I'm confident in like our procedures, not in the outcomes of them. I mean, that's what he said, isn't he? He said, I'm confident about the work we're doing.
Yeah.
I'm
very confident with the work the club is doing.
Yeah. It all reads to me that nothing's happening. I'm not that nothing is being worked on, but that the end result of this might be nothing. Like, the work is going on. There's a small pool of talented players that could be acquired in January, and Arsenal are trying to do what they can. But, everything Arteta says and everything we know about Arsenal over the last few years is they won't just do a deal for the sake of it. Much like, was it 3 years ago when Aubameyang went and there was no number 9?
Yeah.
Well, Lacazette was there, but hello again.
She's been really insistent today. What do you want? Sorry, everyone listening on
thoughts
audio.
On Oba.
Yeah, sorry to everyone listening on podcast and not seeing what's happening here. But my cat has decided to join the party to talk about Arsenal's attempts to sign a striker. Do you think Arsenal will sign a striker? No, she doesn't. She's not very confident.
Cat's in it. A dog would tell you yes, but a cat will always tell you the truth.
What do you make of Matthias Tell? What are your thoughts on him?
You know how I normally have quite firm views on things. I'd like to think I do. I have no idea. I don't know how you can assess a striker, a substitute forward at Bayern Munich, with much confidence. At least I don't know how I can, because I don't watch Bayern week in, week out. So what I have is data and clips. And anyone's going to have amazing numbers coming off the bench for Bayern Munich, aren't they? So I don't know. It feels like a lot of teams are kind of in that spot of we don't know really. I think he would improve a Tottenham and improve a Man United, but I keep saying this, Arsenal don't swim in those waters at the moment. Okay. You're not getting rid of her. We might as well just lean into her.
I keep putting her down. She keeps jumping straight back up. I don't know what she's doing. Tottenham bid 50 million for him. I mean, I can't. I said it earlier that I thought if Arsenal were going to do anything, they'd want a loan for him. I can't imagine they're going to be looking for a permanent for Tell, certainly straight off the bat. Anyway, he's a good player. He's an exciting player. Obviously, hasn't really worked out for him at Bayern. But I do wonder if anything is going to happen now with Arsenal. This is kind of that sort of deal is looking like the most likely option of the lot now, I think.
And I just the 50 million gamble for 50 million on Watkins. At least I know what I'm getting for 2 years, even if then after that it becomes a little bit unclear. I've got sort of a strong degree of confidence that for the next season and a half or 2.5 seasons, Ollie Watkins will be a really good Premier League striker. I would just be I have no idea on Tell. No idea at all. And that's why, like you say, loan for him, perfect, because you see the talent, you see the output, but you don't really know how it translates to the Premier League. And we know that Bundesliga to Premier League can be a hard switch. If some other team wants to spend 50 million on him and it works out, fair play to them. But I will still look back on that if Tell is winning the Golden Boot next season and say, I don't think Arsenal could have known how good he would be.
Mm. Yeah, it doesn't feel like one that would immediately help this season either, isn't it? He's a young teenager coming to the bright lights of London from a team where he's not been playing much. He's going to have a period of acclimatization and everything. It just doesn't feel like something that's going to really impact this season. It feel like something maybe for next season. So,
whereas at Spurs, he'll be a veteran, won't he? At the heady age of 19 or whatever he is.
Yeah. I saw all their kids dug them out of a hole last night in the Europa League. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. It seems like he's definitely going to be making a move to the Premier League to someone, and there's plenty of clubs in for him. We'll wait and see if it's Arsenal. Right. Team news wise, let's quickly. This is what Mikel said. The big doubt, obviously, is David Raya ahead of. Actually, before we get onto that, Sven Nypan. I keep changing my mind how this is pronounced. I'm sure it's sort of Nypan, but someone said Nypan, but I'm sure it's like Nypan. He's staying at Rosenborg for the season. David Ornstein writing that story today that he's decided. We've all been waiting for his decision. He's had his tour of all the clubs. He was at City. He's been at Arsenal, Aston Villa, Girona. Obviously, sort of trying to get him in terms of the City group, and he's decided to stay, which I think has surprised an awful lot of people. Everyone thought this was the month he was going to move. He was going to leave Rosenborg, but he's decided to stay, and we'll sort of assess it again come the summer. I know you're quite a big fan of him because of your Football Manager days. So are you disappointed that he's not going to be coming to Arsenal? Certainly right now, anyway.
I saw John Cross reporting that Arsenal are the front runners. Don't know the guy at all except what he did on Football Manager for me, which was being a beating heart of the midfield in my Sunderland side that won the Premier League title. And I can't ask for more than that, can I, Sverre Nypan? We joke about it, but we all played, whenever we played Football Manager, Championship Manager, whatever it was, we all saw these players that you never heard of. You got them on the game because, Wonder Kid or whatever. And then 2.5 years later, you're sort of seeing them in the real world and you're like, I know them from somewhere. Who knows? Like, everyone says he's brilliant as well. And the clips I've seen, really encouraging, sort of versatile midfielder. And if he wants to stay at Rosenborg and see out that season and come to Arsenal, I don't really see why Arsenal would worry. I'd love to sort of, do the deal in January and loan him back to Rosenborg or however it works, just to make sure you've kind of got him and he can't change his mind. But, in many ways, it makes me think more of a player that he would say, I can wait to earn this money and make this big move. I'll finish what I've started here and develop as a player. Because if he came to Arsenal, I don't think any of us are expecting him to maybe even play at all, but certainly not play a big role from the off.
No, it's kind of like what Benjamin Sesko did, wasn't it? It's inevitable he's going to go somewhere.
Kind of like what Kaoru Mitoma's doing.
Yeah, 90 million. Is that was the second bid that's come in from Mitoma? 90 million. What is that? Pounds or euros?
I heard pounds. Others have heard euros.
Wow.
Whatever it is, it's a lot of 65 million guaranteed, I should say, because I know that sort of people on the Brighton end are calling it 65, but 65 plus major add-ons.
Is it? Oh, Brighton have turned that down, haven't they?
Yeah, I think partly because Mitoma's not really pushing to go. Huge serious respect money to anyone that turns that down.
Serious money. Yeah, what's Duran's wages? Is it 500 grand a week? Is that what I heard? Jeez. That is mad. 500 grand a week. Although, small change compared to what Erling Haaland is earning at Manchester City. Obviously, huge game on Sunday. How are you feeling ahead of it? Are you excited? Or is it going to be a bit of a stinker? I've got a feeling it might well not be the prettiest game of football we've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, with a sort of professional journalist hat on, not really excited at all. But there's a real intrigue. I think City have been really poor still, even while the form book has swung back in the direction. I thought they were really poor on the first half of on Wednesday. Playing like basically the system they played when they won the treble with De Bruyne and Haaland as the front two, and they could get nothing going. really vulnerable as well down what will be the Arsenal left. Bernardo Silva can't cover defensively anymore if you play him high up the pitch. And did you see Bruges' goal?
Yes.
Did you see what a former Barcelona sort of trainee did to Mateus Nunes?
Was that down the left?
Yeah, pretty brutal. Yeah. Bruges could do that every time they wanted. It was like that. I don't blame Mateus Nunes because he's not a right back, and Pep Guardiola's got not a right back playing at right back. So Martinelli really tends to turn up in these big games. So I'm very intrigued, excited to see how he gets on. I mean, honestly, I sort of thought about tweeting it just before the penalty. I thought this wasn't just a game for Martinelli to get back in form. I thought it might have been a game for Raheem Sterling to get back in form. But I do wonder if that ship might have sailed. But yeah, I think I don't know what City can do to stop Martinelli other than change the players that they're playing. Play someone like Kuzanov at right back, and we know he's not. You know, he's still learning his game. So I think it's a real opportunity for Arsenal if they can get their left flank going.
You think? I was kind of looking. I was talking actually. I was doing a piece for Sportsmile when I was doing a video thing with their Manchester City guy, and he was talking about how Pep seems to be reverting a little bit of late to, like you said, the treble winning tactics. I think they'll go pretty direct against Arsenal. I'd be surprised when you look at the midfield that they're going to play, and you look at Arsenal's midfield. I think Arsenal would fully expect to dominate in the central areas in that, and I wouldn't be surprised if City try and sort of just beat Arsenal's press and just go long. They've had success against Arsenal doing that in recent years as well. True. Sort of just hitting Haaland long, getting him down the channel. Certainly, admittedly, Rob Holding was at the heart of defence that day, but they went so direct in that game a couple of years ago, and Arsenal just couldn't deal with Haaland running off De Bruyne as well and the knockdowns. I wouldn't be surprised if that's how they go up against it. Obviously, Arsenal are going to have Gabriel and Saliba there, and I can't wait for the Gabriel, Saliba, Haaland battle as well, because Mikel was asked about it, and he was asked about Haaland's stay humble, and he was like, what do you make of that now? And he said, I don't take anything personally. What happens on the pitch for me since I've been a player stays there. It's full of emotions and things. I just put it aside and move on, which is quite frankly rubbish, because we've seen the documentary. He had Ivan Toney's tweet on the screen before the Brentford game about a year later, and he had it on the screen for all the players for it to be the last thing they saw when they walked out on that pitch. So what he said there is absolute rubbish. He remembers.
I'm
Gabriel
certain
will remember.
That the PA at the Emirates will play Kendrick Lamar's Humble at some stage.
Peter, there you go. The challenge is laid down.
There you go, Peter.
Yeah, and Gabriel will remember. He said afterwards, didn't he? He said, "Oh, we can't wait to welcome him back to the Emirates," or something like that. And it's going to be a real high intense game. I don't think it's going to be a beautiful game of football. I'd be very, very surprised. I think it's going to be what Arsenal Man City has been the last few games. It's going to be intense. It's going to be pretty nasty, niggly. There's going to be lots of fouls, and there's going to be some really big sort of one-on-one battles, like sort of Gabriel and Haaland. So I am kind of looking forward to it in that way. I mean, for Arsenal, who's this a bigger game for? I mean, it's got to be a bigger game for Arsenal, you'd say, out of the two. But City are beginning to find a bit of form. I think since Christmas, no one's scored more goals than them in all competitions. So they are, they're scoring.
They played
goals.
Ipswich,
and Fleetwood in that as well.
Yeah,
but they are scoring goals again. Even in midweek, like you didn't obviously said they didn't play too well, but the second half they, from all accounts, pretty much steamrolled at Bruges, didn't they? It was one-way traffic from that point. I thought they were pretty good from what I saw. Admittedly, I was driving home from Wolves, listening on the radio, but I watched
the
highlights against Chelsea, and it seemed like they.
It's another game where they had to where Plan A didn't work, and like when you're talking about long ball, they just went full it was like watching. Newcastle not Newcastle, like a sort of 90s Premier League team hitting Les Ferdinand.
Yeah. Well, you think of their first goal, the equaliser in that, which was Guardiola, wasn't it? After, was it Nunes went through on down the, who was it who got in down the left?
Yeah, Nunes over the top, and Guardiola scores the rebound.
And just before that, Guardiola had done a similar run to what Nunes did, but he put the shot wide, didn't he? And you look at the joy they got from that. And then in the Arsenal-Wolves game, if you remember, Nouri had a chance to equalise late on when it was just a Jose Sarr long ball, and he got in behind, I think it was Timber, in the exact similar sort of position to what we saw City have some joy in. And I wouldn't be surprised if that is a tactic they look to exploit against Arsenal as well. So I think Arsenal are going to have to really deal with those sort of runners in between the the fullbacks and the centre backs and actually track them better than Chelsea did. Not play as quite a high line as Chelsea did either. But I think midfield's going to be key. When you look at the legs in the Arsenal midfield, certainly in Odegaard and Rice, up against who they might be up against in those central areas. I think if Arsenal, I think if they play well, if they turn the ball over as quickly as I expect they might, if they can stop City going long, I think Arsenal will, should hopefully have too much for them. Then it's just all about Arsenal taking their chances. They've just got to be clinical.
Yeah, that's the worry for Arsenal, because these games don't have a lot of chances. Like you said, it's going to require that Havertz, Martinelli, Odegaard, if they get one shot, two shots, they score. But I do think in the end, when you see the sort of success of the long ball that City have had before, like you said there, it's not against Gabriel and Saliba. If that back four is what I think it will be and includes David Raya in it as well, then I really don't see the sort of weak link there that City can hit in kind of the way that they did against Chelsea, where it was clear that like Colwill, Chalobah, those guys just were not of the level to deal with long balls to Haaland. And, same with Bruges as well. Like when Savinho came on and they had a true sort of front five going at them, Bruges didn't have the answers, but Arsenal probably would have the answers. And that's why I'm sounding quite confident, which I'm sure no one who's watching or listening to this is enjoying.
You think that it was Savinho, wasn't it? He came off the bench and changed that game. You think it will definitely start this weekend? I think he's played himself into the starting lineup, hasn't he?
Well, Marmoush is the one, though, isn't he? Who could start.
Did he play at all? Did he play at all against Bruges?
Can't be registered until the knockout.
Oh, of course, that's
phases. So he'll be fresh and ready to go. So I assume Marmoush will play, but I'd be very confident about Timber in that one-on-one battle with Marmoush. In that game, he was sort of cutting in behind a sort of aged Reece James and Trevor Chalobah playing his first Chelsea game in a while. So I think Arsenal have got all the tools they need to quell City, who I don't think are sort of at that chance creation level. So I think you'll see something like Marmoush left and Bernardo right of that front two. I don't know, but then I don't know if you can play Marmoush and De Bruyne. Whatever it is, like at the moment, they're just not really creating that many great chances that often, even though they're scoring, like when they come up against good teams. And it just feels like Pep doesn't know his best 11. Whereas Arteta knows at least 10 of them. He's just got to sort of set up that midfield in the right way.
Yeah, got to see who plays in goal. This is what he said about team news. Where is it? David, obviously Raya, uncertain. We have another session tomorrow, another 48 hours. It's a muscular issue, so we have to wait and see. Ben is definitely out, Ben White. He hasn't trained yet, so he's not going to be available. No other news from the game against Girona. I mean, obviously, the David Raya thing is a massive. If Raya's not in goal, I'd feel far less confident given what we saw from Neto. It would definitely be an area that Man City would look to target if Neto's in goal for that game. I would expect David Raya to play. He was over in Spain. He was out on the pitch afterwards. He looked fine by all accounts. The journalists over in Spain were saying that he looked okay. Obviously, if it's a muscular issue, you might not be able to see it if he's just walking around. But I mean, they will do everything they can to get him fit for this game, won't they?
Yeah, Mikel's just reached boy who cried wolf stage, hasn't he? I don't believe it.
No, I agree. It's so hard to take anything that he says about injuries or team news seriously. It's just a case of all right, we'll see on the day.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Right, let's move on to some questions, shall we, before we wrap this one up? Got a few. Here's James, who's asking about Richard Garlick. He says, is he fit for purpose or is he doing an excellent job? Ever since Josh Kroenke appointed Garlick, we've lost our technical director, who seemed to have a great synergy with Arteta and the rest of the operational management team. We have not sourced a replacement technical director since Edu quit 4 months ago. Garlick has not provided the support to Jason Ito. Garlick has not renewed contracts for the players who have 2 years left, most notably Saliba. Alternatively, the CEO acts as a buffer between the owners and operational teams. So is this why Garlick was appointed? I'm asking, as at the moment, I don't see he is adding any value, but he has recruited his associate and Tim Lewis. Can you shed some light on that? I mean, he didn't recruit Tim Lewis. Tim Lewis is Kroenke's appointment. It's nothing to do with Richard Garlick. He's a trusted advisor of the Kroenkes and has been for many a years from once they first came over to Arsenal. So that was nothing to do with Garlick. is he fit for purpose? He's a very good and respected operator. Very nice guy as well. Is he fit for purpose? I don't know. Would you look at this window and the lack of activity and sort of point your finger towards Richard Garlick? I'm not sure I would. I don't think he'd be the first person I'd be pointing towards.
No, I think in the end we'll need a sort of broader view to assess him, because obviously he has been promoted to what, to the best of my knowledge, is a job he's not done before. Although he has been very senior in other football clubs other than Arsenal. Obviously he stepped up when Vinay left. And I think we kind of have to bear in mind that Edu's departure is, you can't really sort of put on the guy that had barely even got his feet through the door. And everything we know about Edu's departure is it was a surprise. There hadn't been a series of incidents leading up to it. He just went. And I think that's on Edu more than anyone else. And I wonder if in 18 months' time it might actually end up changing Edu's general standing at Arsenal, which probably was as high as anyone beyond the true legends of the club. Ito, the support is there. Like, that's what we're told, is that Jason Ito is getting support from Richard Garlick. Who was I can't remember the guy who was appointed to sort of do Garlick's role. But they did bring in someone to fill that role.
Came in from the FA, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, I've forgotten his name now.
I mean, this is the point. It's very hard to know when you're not there how effective an exec in particular is, because they don't pick the team. They kind of sign off on the budget, but they don't scout the players. So I could give you more thoughts on us, the scouting department and technical department and all that, than the CEO. I mean, the contract thing though is the thing that I've said I worry about, the sort of the fact that it seems like Arsenal have been in chrysalis a little bit since Edu left.
The thing with that though is when Edu was here in the last round of contracts for those key players, they all got down into their final years before it was sorted. Edu didn't sort them with 2 years to go, when it was probably easier deals to do then than it would be now, because of their standard, how much it's increased in the last couple of years. And so that, Saliba, Saka, they were all into their final years before they signed those contracts. And now they've still got over 2 years left on these ones. So just about. So I don't really look at that as, again, they're going to be complicated deals to do. They're not going to be that easy to do with those ones. So I don't look at the fact that they're now getting down towards the 2-year mark and point the finger at Richard Garlick over that.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest as well, if you look at like who could be a free agent in 2027, it's so many players. Musiala, there's a few at Madrid, Wirtz, kind of now it's I think players are a little bit more comfortable letting it drift right towards the end.
Look at Trent Alphonso Davies this year. They're all they're still in talks over signing, but they've only got a couple of months left at their teams.
And I think they'll all start looking as well at the deals that people like Haaland and Palmer have signed, and say to teams like Arsenal, if you want to get me to sign early, you're going to need to commit to be paying me when I'm no good, when I'm 34, 35, which is what City had to do to get Haaland. I wrote about this last week. Like, the big problem that every top club has is that Real Madrid have effectively said that the new way of doing business is, as a player, is let your contract run down and we'll sign you for nothing.
Yeah,
give you a nice big bonus and wages that your current employers can't imagine.
It's very awkward for other
very hard to turn that down.
What Real Madrid are doing, it's not ideal, and I do worry, absolutely, especially about Saliba when it comes to Real Madrid. I think it's going to be a hard one. But yeah, I don't really look at Garlick to do with that. I mean, look, I can only give my sort of personal opinions on Garlick, and obviously I'm not sitting there behind the scenes in his office watching what he does week in, week out. But from my personal sort of the few dealings I've had with Richard Garlick, I know he's very respected. I know everyone at Arsenal who I talk to think he's doing an excellent job. But ultimately, he's going to be judged on what happens in the next year or so, 2 years, isn't he? In terms of on the pitch and off the pitch. I think it's just right now, I just think it's far, far too early to sort of judge the job that he's doing, given he's only been in the role a short time. And in that time, he's lost a technical director and is having to cover or help sort of fill in for a guy while they're waiting to make an appointment as well. So, yeah, thank you, James, for that question. Here's one from Carl. Hi, Charles and James. Based on where we are now in the league, Champions League and Carabao, how would you define success and failure for the club at the end of the season? In your opinion, have we pushed on from last season, or have we gone a few steps backwards? Do you want to start that one?
Yeah, I feel like Arsenal
can of worms this one, the answers to this.
Yeah, I think they're in a holding pattern, really, aren't they? They didn't fix the big issues in the 11, but those are hard issues to fix, and they haven't got worse. They haven't got worse, like in terms of results, at a time when everything that's happened would make you think that they have. Everyone says, and I heard this in the press, and it's a very valid point. Everyone says, if we'd known where Man City were going to be, everyone would have expected Arsenal to be champions. But Charles, if I'd said to you, Bukayo Saka's going to miss 3 months, Martin Odegaard's going to miss 2 months, Arsenal are going to get 4 red cards in their first 23 games of the season, Declan Rice is going to spend the first half of the season puffing. James Gunnerblog did a brilliant intro on all this. I don't want to sort of inadvertently steal that. But if I told you all those things were going to happen, where would you have said Arsenal were going to be in the Premier League table?
Yeah, no, I know what you're going to mean. I know what you mean. I do think they've done very, very well to. No, that's wrong. Not very, very well. They've done well to be where they are, given everything.
I think very, very well.
Yeah, given everything that's gone wrong this season, I think they've done fine. Have they gone forwards? No. Have they gone backwards? I don't think they've gone backwards. I think they just are where they were last season. And so, I think they've just treaded water a little bit this season, and it just comes back to it does come back to injuries, but it comes back to the summer transfer window. They didn't do enough in the summer transfer window to really push themselves forward, so it's no surprise they're kind of standing a bit still, I think, this season. But I don't think they've not been bad. It's not been a bad season, but I don't think you certainly, if they end this season now, at the end of the season, they've won nothing and they've finished second. They've gone out in the semi-final of the Carabao. They've got to the quarters or semi-finals of the Champions League. I certainly wouldn't sit there and say it's a success, but I wouldn't say it's an out-and-out failure, because I think you have to factor in what has gone on in the 9 months previous to that. And it has just been, awful strokes of luck, bad injuries, all the things added together that have to be. You can't not take that into account when you're judging a season. You can't.
Yeah, 100%.
Right, one from Pavel now says, on Sterling, I think he hasn't been helped with our style of play. I understand Arteta's intentions behind his command and control style of football, but the trade-off this season has been slower transitions and less running off the last man. I think we'd be seeing a different Sterling if we're playing the way we did in 22-23. I know Sterling is lacking end product at the moment, but at least he's given 110%. Thought he looked semi-bright against Girona. Big man, Charles, boss man, Benge.
I am the boss.
Yeah. Are you? Not sure.
No, not at all.
Sterling, I didn't actually think he played too badly against Girona, but I said it at the time. There was never any doubt in my mind that he wasn't missing that penalty when he was waiting to take it against in the last minute. I don't know. It was just such a bad idea, because he's a bad penalty taker anyway.
Yeah.
And it just was not a good idea to let him have one of those sort of sympathy pens to try and get him going again, because it was always going to backfire. You could just tell. I would not have put a single penny on him scoring that goal. When the camera zoomed in on his face as he was waiting to take it, it was just so glaringly obvious he was not going to score. And it was a shame, because it was actually one of his better performances. He did hold on to the ball too long at times. But do you think his struggles this season had anything to do with Arsenal's style of play? Do you think it's just not a very good fit, like Pavel was suggesting?
Yeah, I think Pavel's made a really good point there. I think even when you see those sort of exciting moments where Sterling dribbles, he'll beat one man, but the challenge of sort of the way Arsenal have been playing this season with, I think, command and control is a good way of putting it, is you can't beat one man, you've got to beat 2 or 3. Especially when, the nature of Odegaard and where he likes to position himself means he brings defenders towards you, and that works great if it's Odegaard and Saka, but Saka's on another level to Sterling. So I think Pavel has nailed that on the head. Obviously I can't speak to the Girona game, but the only question I have is that giving it 110%, I think the thing that I've been very unimpressed but not surprised with has been that off the ball, I felt a lot like Sterling has just switched off. And I think that's one of the main reasons why Arteta doesn't trust him in big games. And it's why I'd be stunned if he started against City, even for all the sort of, he'll be up for it. He had great games against them with Chelsea last season. I would be stunned, because he does not do his work off the ball as well as Martinelli, as well as Trossard, and certainly not, Saka as well.
Absolutely no chance he starts against Manchester City. Not a chance.
Bring him on if it's all square though, and see if that narrative can be juiced at all. But no way.
No way, no chance. Ranieri's miles ahead of him in the pecking order. I don't think Ranieri starts, but I think it will obviously be Martinelli and Trossard and Havertz up front. But the first attacking sub will be Ranieri. It's not going to be Sterling. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think maybe it hasn't, but I do think you just look at. I think even if you put Sterling now, maybe if you put Sterling at the age he was in the 2022-23 season, he does well for Arsenal. But I think you do, if you put Sterling at this age now, this current form of Raheem Sterling in that 2022-23, I still don't think he has a great season by any means. I just think it's pretty clear that he's just not that good anymore. I just think he's definitely fallen off the cliff a little bit. But I did think he was okay against Girona. We've got one last one here, which is from Big T Frosty. He says, bit of a random question, but wondered if you and James could give us a bit of insight into press conferences and what happens if you're the last journo to ask a question. What if everyone else has taken your questions? And from what time, and from your time with Arteta, what is he like when he's not on camera? Thanks for great content, long-term listener. Well,
this has to be quite a lot.
This has happened to me so many times. It's unbelievable because you're sitting there thinking, what am I going to ask him today? Which, again, this puts pay to any belief of people that you have to pre-submit questions and stuff like that. So many of the times I'm sitting there knowing that he's Dan Tolhurst or someone's going to point at me and I'm thinking, what on earth am I going to even ask him about today? And you're trying to think, and then you've got something, you think, yeah, that's good, that's good. And then the person before you suddenly goes and asks you a question. You're like, oh, that's what I had planned. Loads of times, to be honest with you, loads of times, if I've got a couple of questions in mind, I'm thinking of, if they get asked beforehand, so many times I'll just say to the press officer, don't worry about me. It's like there's no point. But obviously other times you just pivot and go down another route and just come up with a question that you think's good, or you respond to something that he said earlier in the press conference as well that you go to.
Yeah, I think sometimes the most important thing you can do in our position is make sure you're listening to everything Arteta says, because he gives you hints. And sometimes he will backtrack, but that's what you have to do. I mean, it's happened to me like 2 weeks ago, though, and it was more like I had 2 questions set up and then bang, Amy asked one, Tom asked the next. And I mean, that was a moment where I just froze and was like, oh, God, okay. And he just, because Dan's literally came to me next, I was like, well, I'll have to ask something. I don't think it was great. I don't think I used the quote, but I think always have things in your back pocket. You can always ask about a player as well. If there's normally 3 or 4 excellent performers. I always ask about Big Gabby if I'm short on ideas, because Arteta loves talking about Big Gabby. As for the second part, we don't spend that much time with him that isn't off camera, but once or twice, and even like when the cameras get switched off in pre-match press conferences, I think it's very clear that some of the sort of generally, I mean, he can break out into laughs on camera too, but he does ease up a bit. That's true of every manager. He's nothing like how Arsene Wenger would change. Even like in later years, when you switch the camera off for Arsene Wenger, he would just be like, right, come on, everyone, pull up you. It's sort of, let's spend 20 minutes just chatting about the football world as it is. He's not like that, but he gets easier. But I don't remember ever sort of spending time with him in a sort of non-work context. Have you?
No, not really. Yeah, I mean, literally, when at press conferences, for those watching, he'll literally come in. Everyone's sort of milling around in the press room waiting. Then they'll get a signal that he's on his way. Everyone sort of legs it over to the seat, sits down. He walks through the middle, sits down, says hello, answers questions, and then goes out again at the end. He doesn't really mill around and wait. So you don't really get to see exactly what he's like behind the scenes. And he's not really the guy who sort of hangs around. Like you said, Wenger would do that at times, but Arteta's not. The one that I went in last year was for something I was doing for Goal, and no, it wasn't for Goal. It was for, who is it for? Planet Football or someone. I can't remember what it was. And I got to spend some time with him then, sort of away from it. It wasn't like press conferencey wise. It was just sort of sitting down. I was talking to him about his family back in Spain, and it was for a piece where I was doing for them. For where we were looking at sort of the makeup of a manager's mind and stuff like that. It was very specific.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
And yeah, I think since he's arrived, that was the longest one-on-one time I've spent with him. We had a good sort of half hour sitting there, and he really opened up on his family and his granddad and everything like that. And he was very relaxed. Like you see the press conference today, he was just not. Did you watch it? He was he was on edge from the start. He wasn't. You can tell with him within 2 minutes. You can tell what sort of mood he's in, and he wasn't up for it today at all. But it was completely different then when I was sitting with him on my own, and it was very much at ease and not. I don't know. At press conferences, you're always on the lookout to be tripped up as a manager, aren't you? And in that situation, he wasn't.
Will even be like that, sort of in the general, like around us, if we was, because it's just the nature of like the relationship that we have to have with him is we're not his friends, and we shouldn't be. He's got to be sort of like wary of what we might say, and what we might say he said and how he said it. I think he was. It's certainly a lot better than it used to be, though, isn't it, Jonathan? It used to be on Zoom when we asked the wrong question.
Oh yeah, the Zoom days. Oh God, they were bad. They were bad. I remember at that time when he went mad at me, and it wasn't even. I was asking a question about something or other. It was you, actually. I think you were laughing or something. You were laughing at something he'd said earlier, or in response to something he said to me. And he saw you.
Asked him if it was one of the Europa League games, and I'd asked him. Then they'd crossed like 70 times, and I said, was this what you were trying to do? He just said yes, and like when someone gives you that sort of one word, quite dismissive answer, you might like a natural response might be to laugh in an awkward way.
No, but there wasn't just that. It was because this is a good example actually of sort of listening to what's been said before, and then you sort of do a follow-up question. Because I was next, and I tried to push him on why, because he just gave you a one-word answer, and then I tried to push him on to expand on it a little bit more. And I think then he saw you laughing because he was watching on the screen. In the Zoom days, he had about 50 journalists on a screen in front of him while they were taking. And yeah, he took it out on me completely. Didn't answer my question, and then I couldn't hear because it was Zoom. I couldn't hear what was going on, and it just got very awkward. But yeah, he's not like the overly friendly type of guy, and so yeah, you don't really have any sort of personal relationship with him, do you? And you just don't.
And obviously, because of that, we've been sharpening the knives ever since. We're just waiting for him to trip up.
I think a lot of people will disagree when it comes to me. I mean, I wrote a book about him, so apparently I'm his PR agent. Apparently, so many people think. But anyway, I hope that answers your question, Big T Frosty. And that's it. I've cut James off already. No, I haven't. You're back. That's it for this week. Thank you very much. Apologies again, everyone, that this is 24 hours later than it was originally scheduled to be. But I hope you've enjoyed it anyway. You there on Sunday? You in the press box?
Press box on Sunday.
Okay, well, I'm not. I'm in the stands, and I'll be in the 12 pins. Anyone out before the game, head down to the 12 pins in Finsbury Park before the game. I'll be there having a few drinks with some mates. And yeah, hopefully it's going to be one hell of an atmosphere on Sunday, and we can all leave it very, very happy. James, it's been a pleasure. As always, enjoy the weekend, mate. We'll be back to do this again next week. And yeah, speak to you soon. Have a good one, mate.
You too. Bye-bye.